Welcome to the Cabin Fever Show 2020 here at the Baldwinville Legion, hosted by the Narragansett Historical Society. This year we got 13 collectors that showed a new group of collections, which is really nice to see, from lanterns to pocketbooks and Greyhound buses. You've seen them all. So it's a great show, and we've had a really good turnout. A lot of people showed up asking a lot of questions. Really turned out to be a nice day, even though it was, 60 degrees outside. Everybody did come in and enjoyed the show. So this year I decided, instead of doing my pocket watches and things in my own personal collection, we got together with 3 or 4 members and we went through our historical society to see what we had on display that would be interesting and share with the public as they come in and take a look. And so we did a traditional What Is It table, where we put some really odd tools and unusual artifacts, and we let people guess and ask, we asked them what they thought it was, and it was a fun afternoon of people coming up with some funny solutions for some of these tools that we had. We did identify a couple of them. Howard, as you've seen in the clips, does a lot of the planes, so he's got knives that go in here, and this one turned out to be carving the inside of a barrel to accept the lid when they put them on an old wooden barrel. So this is the little thing that the woodmaker would use to carve that lip. So that was newly identified today at the Cabin Fever Show. We also featured a couple of the other tools and oddities, and John Brooks showed up. He has a farm out in Baldwinville Road, and he brought some of his old grinding machines that were in the barn, and some of them he didn't realize what they did. One of them is a meat grinder, so you can actually put your meat and bread and everything and make sausage. And another one for coffee, and this one with some pretty serious spikes in it was for stripping off the cow corn. So they prepare it, get the cobs off, feed it to the cows.
Our town historian. What do you have here?
That's me. Well, mostly, other than the plate and the match holder over the other side, this is all stuff that was either my grandparents or my wife Phyllis's grandparents. And we've just saved it and collected over the years. That's an egg box that was made by Winchester Box Company here in Baldwinville.
Keep your eggs safe?
Yeah, it's called the Garden Egg Box, and it was made right across the street on this side of the river. The other side of the river, over in Baldwinville, Winchester Box Company. They moved here from Winchester, New Hampshire. Started down there, the factory burnt out. Actually, the factory burnt out in Winchester. Moved down here, built a factory there, that burnt, and they moved up off the railroad tracks up off of Winchester Street in Baldwinville. I believe that's probably Winchester Street was named after them. But they also changed the name, I believe, up there to the Baldwinville Box Company. Well, my dad, that's from my dad, the old cowbell. That was my father had. The old apple peeler, I have no idea how old that is. That was my grandparents. It goes back quite a few years, but I don't know exactly when. It was made by a company in Pennsylvania.
Turn that and it would peel the apple.
Right. Yeah. You put the apple on the end, and the spears on the end there, and you can actually buy it. They have them nowadays that are a little more modern than that, but it's the same idea.
My wife could beat it. Peels it all off in one coil.
The cream bottle is just something that was my grandparents' stuff. Or it might have been her grandparents. I'm not positive where that came from exactly. The sewing machine was my wife's. That was something I believe probably grandparents had too. That did work until a few years ago. We had a hot tub in a sunroom, and I didn't realize it, but the steam from the hot tub was affecting that, and it rusted it up on us. So it doesn't operate. It won't operate now. It froze. This was a bread maker. And actually, you can probably see it better anyway. It was a bread maker, and it actually has the recipe for the bread on the cover.
That helps.
I don't know if is it upside down or is it?
Yeah, I can tell you.
No. But that's, and we've never used it.
And that would help knead the dough.
Right, everything was done in here. It rides in here and everything, and just bake it. And this was my grandmother's. This is a pecan cracker, something my parents had, or like I said, probably goes back to my grandparents again. It's a nutmeg grinder. That was my grandmother's. This here is it was done by a silversmith in Springfield, and his name was Charles Hall. I can't find much on him other than that he was in business, but it's something that her grandparents had, and we've saved it over the years.
And you have a mystery here, I guess.
Right, the plate. I bought that plate on eBay about 2-3 years ago. I have no idea where they were located. It's a Willoughby Brothers grocery store. It was dated 1910, and I cannot find where they were located in Templeton. I looked in the tax report for 2005, and I found an Arthur Willoughby, who was the only thing I found in 2005 was they lived in Templeton Center, and he paid a poll tax. 1912, I found him in the street list. He's listed as being in East Templeton. Again, he just paid a poll tax. He's shown there as he was an operator for a trolley, ran a trolley. I can't find nothing on, I don't even know if it's a right family or anything. Can't find that. I'd love to know what the store is. That's how I grew up. When I grew up, we made our own butter. We had 5 milking cows. We sold milk to the neighbors. The egg scale, same thing. We sold eggs to the neighbors. The egg scale was to weigh eggs, small, medium, and large. But we made our own butter. My mother made cottage cheese. So we pretty well did everything ourselves back then too,
Elisa, really. Elisa. Yeah.
Eliza or Lisa?
Elisa. But
I'm gonna write one of these tries.
yeah, but everybody called me Lisa. So, Betty Boop is the American sweetheart in the old days on cartoons. And I end up collecting them. I start collecting them 2000 and 2001. And this is what I end up. Growing up, the only cartoon we can get in the Philippines is Popeye, Betty Boop, and Roadrunner. So Betty Boop is a better choice for me than Popeye. They're all favorite, because when I see them, I get excited. So they're all favorite. There's no, I guess when you collect stuff, there's no favorite or less favorite, because at that time when you see it and get it, buy it, it's the best one at that time, Most of these are 20 years old. And I have 2 of them in there. They're original. My brother-in-law at Hope, British Columbia made them for me. So those are good. Yes, I do, all over the world. I collect the spoons since 1975 when I was in Hong Kong. And from there, wherever I go in the world, I buy the spoon. So I have a lot of collection, Caribbean. My latest one is Dubai. Well, with the collection, they're small, the spoon are small, and don't have to worry about immigration or taxes and all that. So that's how I end up with spoon. Because again, 1975, I already had some Hong Kong spoon, then Philippines, then again, wherever I go in the world or stop at the airport, that's what I buy. And that's why I end up with all of this. So I still got more at home, but this is it. Statue of Liberty,
Yeah,
because that's
awesome.
yeah, those are limited edition when they made them. I guess because they closed the Statue of Liberty for renovation, and then with the Millennium, they made those. I don't remember how many of those that they make, but that's one of them. Yes, and guess what? Marilyn Monroe's birthday is June 1st. I'm a June 1st. So that's one thing I have in common with Marilyn Monroe.
I actually started with a camera from my father. I had one that was, these two were mine when I was younger, and I decided to put them in a small display, which put me on the track to this collection. And it just swelled and grew. Most of these I've picked up at flea markets, yard sales. Just came intrigued. Started collecting some of the accessories, some of the old advertisements, and it just grew and grew. Yeah, this was interesting. I found this at a yard sale. It's from 1936. It takes 30 millimeter film. The shutter still works. I'm assuming it still works if I could find the film. I don't know if I could find the 30 millimeter film. It's a fold up. A lot of these are from the 30s. Some from the 60s. This one here is interesting. This is from this area. It's actually produced in Dover, New Hampshire. And interesting with the front, it comes with its own filters built right into the face of the camera. Well, this one, I like this one here because of the look of it. This is more of this is kind of like a little bit on the Art Deco look. It has some interesting lines. I like the bellows kind of cameras. This one is from Italy. I thought it was kind of cool because it's a very small box camera. All metal though, not the cardboard like some of the other ones on the other side. This camera here is also a Kodak, and this has the off shutter reflex. This one is Kodak. Interesting thing with this particular model, it had its own stylus where you could actually write on the film what it was. Wow. This is back from the 30s. So they were kind of advanced when you think about what we do today. Yeah. This one here, which is called a Big Shot, this came out in the 60s, 70s. This was actually the camera that became very popular because Andy Warhol used this for his portraits. A lot of your posters that you see from Andy Warhol, he used this particular camera to get the portrait shots. And Polaroid also had some of these larger cameras. It actually came with lenses, and it came with a tape measure so you could measure the distance you needed to be from the subject you were taking. It was all built in. These are all Polaroids, just different models. Again, they stuck, even these were from the 70s, but they still stuck with the bellows, the fold up, so they folded up. Folded up tight. Some of them had collapsible flashes. Once the camera was shut up, this would go inside. And some Polaroids were like this SX70, this is what they considered compact. This is still sought after too. This is used quite a bit by Polaroid fanatics. You can still again buy the film for this as well. They'll still develop it for you. Oh, yeah, you can still get it developed. It might cost you a little more money, but they're still developing film. No, I haven't.
I gotta go take shots.
Trusty phone. Someone was saying, 15 years from now, it won't be cameras. It'll be phones. The flashes still work. The only problem is you can't see for about a half an hour after you do the flash because they're so bright. I did it in the house, and my wife and my daughter couldn't see for a while. They had that blue light.
I have a vintage kitchen business, so that's what got me started into these cleavers. You know, these are basically from the early 1900s. These big ones are used in the meat packing industry in Chicago, Kansas City. These big ones for splitting cattle in half. This here for splitting hogs in half. This is a Filipino knife that the civilians make and carry and sell. So my wife was there and brought some back, but there's a place for a strap, and you'll see them actually wearing them strapped around their shoulders or around their waist, working in the fields, you know. This is other old cutlery from the early 1900s. It's a French chef's knife. This is a marine trench knife. These I made, yes. I made that for a friend, made that for my father, made this for an unknown, it's not done, and I made this for one of my sons. I've yet to make one for myself. Well, this handle's brass. This whole knife is they're all tool steel, hardened tool steel. They're not made from kits. They're from raw material. This one's all brass and red copper. So the red copper rivets match here, they're in here. Rosewood and brass and a handmade hat. This is deer antler and brass, and you see this piece here is made, it's machined to match up sort of with the structure of the antler. The case is handmade, all one piece, I made that. And this is a knife I made for a friend of mine. This is an old harness, Hames Hobbs, like you see on the Clydesdale horses, right? The first one I ever made, I made for a woman. It was a lady's dagger, sort of like this, but with a brass handle so that it would give more weight for self-defense. The sixth one I made, and that's the last one I made. It was made 20 years ago. It's all machined out myself, heat treated myself. My family tells me I should go on Forged and Fire, but it's too rapid pace for me. I'm too much of a fanatic for fit and finish. I would say this one I made for my stepfather.
Everything on this table is probably 100 years old, and when you think of it, they're made of virtually tin or steel and glass. It's surprising that, you know, it lasted 100 years. This lantern right here is one of the oldest. It's from the Civil War era. You know, it came in about 1958. This one right here that looks like got some handles on it, and it looks just like a regular hand lantern, but this went on a ship's compass, and they stopped making these in 1906, and at nighttime you couldn't see the compass, so they had one or two of these on the side. They had slots, and they filled in the slots, and what happened is they would light up the compass at nighttime. There's two over here that are kind of interesting. These were from World War I. They're on board ship, and this is called a deck lantern. And they got the tie downs, and this is made of brass. This one is a sister lantern to it, and what's interesting about this one right here is, you know, they had blackouts aboard ship, and this lantern, what happened is you could black it out just by moving this. Now the lantern is still going, so when you wanted to get the light back, it just slid back down. So
why would they need to black out?
Well, enemy ships, you know.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Probably all these lanterns are rare to some degree in one form or another. This was the first cold blast lantern that came out by Dietz, and so this is an old lantern. It's a lady's lantern that people used around the house, you know. So this is rare. You have, these were called skater's lanterns, people went skating, they would take off the skates and keep the lantern by the skates so they could see where they're going. It was also used to go to the outhouse, you know, to put just a little lantern just to keep yourself going. A dead flame is just this. A dead flame is the light just kind of flickers. It doesn't go anywhere. It's what you light it and it just goes there. The next innovation of lanterns was the hot blast, and with the hot blast, it's the flame the gas still came out the top, the cap, but some of it went down these tubes and fed into the flame. So this is a hot blast. It had some hot air return, and that kept the flame going. This burned kind of a yellowy color. Now, the next one that came up was the cold blast. There's baffles in this the canopy top, and it had more air going down in fueling it. With the cold blast, it had a more of a white flame compared to a yellow flame. So and you could all adjust them by putting the wick up and down. Well, kerosene was the big one. With the Civil War, kerosene became very popular because before that they had a couple of different types, but whale oil was popular. But whale oil, it wasn't just enough; it was expensive. I go to eBay a lot because there's a couple of reasons. One, any given day on eBay, there's 1,000 to 1,200 lanterns that you could go through. So I usually spend a few times a week. I go through all those lanterns just to see if I see something interesting. And then on eBay you can put you can check mark it on a watch list, and then you put bids in. Sometimes my bid is successful, sometimes it's not. But also what's good about eBay, you can see what other people are paying for them, because book value, what's on this table, book value is over $2,000. But if nobody's willing to pay $2,000, then it's worth more to you because of your intrinsic value. But if you watch eBay, you can see what your lanterns go for. And everybody goes to flea markets and they say, I got that dish, I got this, I got that. And they're interested, they can see, well, that's worth that much, So everybody gets that good feeling that way. So, I don't really know, to be honest. I say I always had one or two around the house, and when you retire, older folks tend to go to a lot of flea markets, consignment stores, antique stores, just to something to do, during the day. And I would always walk away with a lantern. And my wife used to say, you don't need another lantern, do you? I think when I got to be about 100 of them, she no longer asked me, She allows me to have so many in the house. The rest of them I have to, put in a place I have at the house. I display them. But I don't know. I find enjoyment owning them. I'm in the process of cataloging them because, when I leave this world, my kids, I don't want to see them selling them at the yard sale for $1 a piece, So.
This is our metal detecting displays. Everything in the cases is found in the ground, metal detecting. It's myself, some of my displays, and my club vice president's displays. My club vice president has put a lot of hard work, Ron Wiley, in the past couple of weeks to make a lot of these. It's some incredible work. Yeah, we try to, I'm doing a lot of recent work with Templeton Historical Society. Recently, like this display was, everything was found behind the Historical Land Museum.
Yeah, a lot of fields, properties, private properties that we've gotten permissions for. Just, it all depends, different parks, just regular town parks that we've been to. Some of the parks that I've been to were old home site locations that they would donate their property to the town after they passed, and they'd made parks or whatever into, and some of that's come from there. Yeah, it just comes from all over.
We try to go anywhere we get permission. That way you're being ethical about it. You don't want to go someplace where you're not wanted. It's going to only cause bad name for the club. My oldest coin to date, which is a 1654 Spanish cob. So technically it's pirate booty that was found out in Lancaster in the cornfield. What another club member told me is the field that I found it in the back part of the field used to be a sanctuary house. So if the Indians did attack, that these people would run across the field and go to this safe house. So my curiosity was, did somebody drop this coin while running from the Indians back in the day?
Yeah, you find so much change, pennies and nickels, dimes. You find that what we call clad, and we just tumble that up, and you can either put it right back in and spend it, or our club collects it throughout the year, and then we donate it to a charity at the end of the year. So depending on how much everybody finds, and is how much we'll donate. So it's pretty cool. It's a good way to do something with it.
The oh my God feeling. It gets emotions quite high. You pull out a nice $50 or something out of the ground, you're gonna remember it. We remember where most of our coins are found. It's not life-changing. I'm waiting for that one life-changing find, but it's something you don't forget. Especially when you pull out something like that the 1654 Cobb. I put my detector down. I was done detecting for the day. I was done. There was nothing going to top that find for the day. I'm quite fond of my Toy Town Tavern spoon, the big one top center. I found that in Templeton here. The Toy Town Tavern is now the Winchendon School, and back in the day, the mid-1800s, used to cater to high-class society. So that spoon, Marilyn Monroe could have ate off it, President Roosevelt. My idol is Albert Einstein, so he also attended to that hotel numerous times.
I don't know, it's all my favorites. Some of the neater relics I found would probably be the old knee and shoe buckles. Those date from 1660 to 1790. The old dog tags from different towns are always really cool. And obviously the coins are always a cool find. Those kind of, you can definitely see because they have dates on them. So, but some of the coins I never knew they existed until I've actually found them and did the research on them. So it's pretty cool.
It's always better detecting with a buddy. My best buddy to detect with is sitting right here, talking with another club member. There's nobody better I'd rather dig with than my club vice president. But to share that excitement, that's the best feeling about finding something, is to share that excitement.
I'm Tina Tangway, and this is my mesh purse collection. Well, this was the first one they had brought 6 years ago, and I thought I'd just come back with it because a lot of people really found it to be interesting. They hadn't seen many purses like this, or at least a large collection of purses like this. So I thought I'd enjoy it. It was a trend years ago where mesh used to have fabric made of mesh, and so it was an easy transition to go from fabric into or from clothing into purses for a decoration. Many of them act just like fabric when they move, and so the chainmail kind of introduced lots of other artisans to making different things out of the chainmail. Some of these are nothing but link after link after link, where this is it's a sort of a closed link system, but these are all hooked links together. Some of these are enamel, they're painted on top. Those are from the 1920s, more like the flapper era. Some of these has multiple purposes, so you would wear it as a ring. This one is a perfumer, and so it has a screw down top, and you would just dab it on you and then screw it back on and hook it back onto your purse. And actually they are coming back into style. You'll see lots of things like this. I think the movement is what people like. You'll see that in a lot of the dresses that are coming back into fashion. So I think they're going to come back into fashion. Well, for instance, this one, which is a chain purse, it's for change or coins, has a flip-up mechanism. And when you flip it up, it opens up into a nice big square. So there's one example. Here's another example of an opening. So this would be for makeup, compact, and it flips open in this manner. And inside you'll find a mirror, and then you could put your makeup inside here. And it has a fun little clasp. Some of the other ones we have have a flip top opening, and it has an accordion type opener, which is quite unique for its time. A lot of the other types, several of them have little stones for you to see. This one has a nice little blue stone in it. And of course, this was a common opener. And this one came from Austria, which is quite unique that it made it all the way here. And so once you collect one thing, somebody likes and notices you collect it, then they start to help you with your own collection. So a lot of these were found a little at a time were gifts, but it's just a fun little thing to collect. And then over time, as I started to collect the silver ones, people started giving me the gold items. And these items are really fun because of the way they move. So you can see that it moves just like fabric. It's really lovely. Well, for instance, this one here is for dance cards, and you can see the woman's dance cards are still inside. Then there were some that were used just for makeup, like this one here. This one was for makeup only. This one is a coin purse because of the way it is designed. And this one was a particular fancy one. You know, the woman would put this around her shoulder and keep all of her important items close to her body so that she could keep track of everything, coins, any gold or whatnot. So she would keep it next to her. That way she would always keep track of it. But I thought that was unique, and it's beaded the entire way. Well, this one is my first. As far as being the oldest, that's really hard to identify which one is older. There's not a lot of dating on any of the pieces itself or any identifying marks. So you have to go back in to do some research to find out. However, my whole collection started with this one because I love the face on it. It's very unique, and it has a lot of weight to it. It's quite heavy. Actually, Brian and I have always been antique people, so we've gone to antique stores, and I found in the 1980s in an antique store. And it was only about $20, $25. But now if you see online, they're about $120 to about $400 or $500 a piece now. So as a collector, we never want to spend that much money on an item unless we have to have it.
My name is Eileen Bouvier. I'm a costume designer, so I always really like the old historical items. This is an exhibit of largely vintage and antique sewing items, trim, notions, tools. I do have a few modern reproductions. Yeah, I actually tried to get a range almost of the entire 20th century. The oldest one here, I don't believe I was able to find a date on it, but it's based on the designer and the clothing style. It's probably from the 19-teens. These two are from the 1920s, and it goes 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and the last one is from the 1980s. Some of them I've purchased myself for my own use, some I've collected over the years. The pattern companies themselves are starting to reissue a lot of their vintage patterns. So this is one, it's a 1930s original pattern, but that they reissued just a couple years ago. And as a costume designer, that's the kind of thing I love because it's new, so I can use it and it's not fragile, but I can get that vintage look for a show. I do mostly work with the Vokes Theater in Wayland. I also recently did a show for the Acme Theater in Maynard. But I've been with Vokes a long time. A lot of times with community theater, you find one place that's kind of your theater home, and Vokes has been that for me for a long time. Most recent one was called Silent Sky. That was a sort of early 20th century setting. I've done musicals, and that upcoming show is The Tempest, so William Shakespeare. It's probably this belt buckle here. Let's see if I can, yeah, that one is most likely late 19th century. A lot of things I don't have an exact date for because, they made them over a long range of time. Styles come in and out of fashion, so unless it has a date actually on it, it can be difficult, but just based on what I know about what I have, that would be the oldest piece. It's all handmade. It's actually the pineapple stitch, which is this oval that kind of looks like a pineapple, was pretty common for crochet patterns. You'd see a lot of them. This would have taken quite a while to make because it's quite a large piece. I don't know what it was made for specifically, but I have my grandmother's Lane cedar chest, and this fits perfectly on top of it, so it might have been for that. But I love it because it's just a beautiful piece of work. Well, it seems to skip generations. I know my great-grandmother did a lot of it. That white and purple trim over there is also something she made. And my mother did sew some when I was younger. She made a lot of my clothes and things, but she hasn't done anything crafty really in a long time. But it seemed to pass on to me. I think one of the things I really love about it is you never stop learning about it. There's so much to know about sewing. There's so many different ways to make a garment. And the history of it is so rich with different tools and different trends and ways that people have found to help themselves make things. Really interests me, and also because very often sewing was a way for women to be independent, and especially in the late 19th and early 20th century, you see a lot of books and magazines and things that were marketed to women with patterns and items, specifically with the idea that a woman who could sew or crochet or knit could make herself a little money, and that way help her family or have a little independent spending money of her own. I do several different needlework styles. I can crochet and knit. I do some embroidery, cross stitch. But I really do like the sewing the best, I think.
Hi, I'm Sherry Briggs, and this is my collection of Jasperware by Wedgewood. It's very distinctive. Here is a typical Wedgewood plate, and it has the famed Wedgewood blue, and it has it's bisque. It's not shiny. It's not glazed. And it has this applique on it that makes the cameo effect. All of these figures are appliqued onto the plate and onto the different pieces. He also had many other colors, as you can see here. Green, this interesting apricot pinky sort of color, white on yellow. That's also a Wedgewood piece. And as are the earrings, and as is the ring. What they did was they had, and you're going to have to picture this because I don't have one, but it's a flat piece of probably bisque porcelain or some such material, possibly plaster. But usually they use bisque of either porcelain or earthenware, which is a lower fire kind of a clay. And they take clay and press it. It's called a press mold. You literally press the clay into the mold. And then you take it out very carefully and you apply it as an applique to the body of the piece, which is unfired when you're doing that. And you can see, looking at the detail, you have to be very, very skilled, and they may use special tools to handle it. I have never seen it done at the Wedgewood factory, so I can't really speak to it. Then, once that's been applied, they fire it once. They don't glaze it. Now I'm going to give myself the lie immediately, because in fact this is a teacup, it's meant to be used, and they do glaze the inside of things that are meant to be drunk from. But the outside maintains the matte bisque appearance. It concerns this box. Now, this box is dark blue, and a lot of the dark blue pieces are older. I was having lunch with a friend in Lee, Massachusetts. Neither of us had ever been there. We were eating in a restaurant, having lunch, all very normal. And there was directly across the street, there was one of these antique and collectibles places. And something about it got me. I had to go look at it. Now, if I went and looked at every antiques and collectibles place I passed, I would never get anything done. I don't generally have this itch, but something, I don't know what. I had to go in there. I had to get in that place and look. So I asked my friend to be very forgiving and patient. I said, I'm going to go right across the street. I want to just take a look in that store quickly. I left the restaurant, crossed the street, entered the door, turned left, all without stopping. Turned left because I spotted the porcelains all on the wall. You can go into an antique store and look and quickly spot where the porcelains are. They're usually in one section. So I turned left immediately, going at speed, went down the corner. There was another lady browsing, but I was going top speed, so I carefully went by her, and I came to the shelf, the place, and I looked, and this was on the shelf. I picked it up, turned around, went at speed to the cashier, paid for it, beetled out the door, and went back to the restaurant, leaving the cashier and the lady who was browsing shaking their heads. It drew me somehow. I don't know, but I'm glad I have it. Beautiful classical motif on the cover. And these cavorting putti, or cherubs, all around.
I'm Howard Sands. I live in Templeton here. I'm a member of the Historical Society. And today I brought a plane collection of planes made from makers in central Massachusetts. When I was growing up, I grew up down in Woodstock, Connecticut, and my neighbor across the road was William Grazier, and he was a handlebarred, very elderly guy when I was little. And he had a workshop that had no power tools. He had light bulbs in it, but everything was done by hand. So one of my brothers and I just loved going in there, and we'd putter around in there, and he'd make things like those one-piece pliers out of wood. You know how you would make that, but he could do things like that. So that got me started, and he never had any children. He and his wife never had children. My dad ended up inheriting his collection, gave it to him. And my dad already had a collection because his father was a carpenter. So then my dad passed away, and I ended up with his collection, and by then I was adding to my own as well. None of my brothers wanted it, so I ended up with his collection. So I've added to it because I buy and sell antique tools, and I'm always adding to it and taking away. When I find something better, I'll keep that and sell the other thing or whatever, you know. But so over the course of time, I have over 600 molding planes, wooden planes. I have a recipe of a product that I use to clean the planes with fine steel wool, but I don't go crazy. Case in point, this plane here is a jack plane, and it was made by Uriah Clapp. Uriah Clapp made planes down in Oakham in the late 1700s and early 1800s. And then about 1820 or so, he moved to Gardner, and he was a cabinet maker in Gardner. So I really don't know if he made the planes in Gardner or if he made them down in Oakham, where he started out as a plane maker. But this plane, the reason I'm bringing it to your attention is someone a long time ago scraped all the patina off of this plane and then put polyurethane over it. As a historical object, that was a big no-no. And the only reason I bought this is because there's only about 20 or so Uriah Clapp planes existing. On the other hand, this is a Yankee plow plane, also made by Uriah Clapp. And this is in original condition. Cleaned, but just left with its age on it. And that the value is in this plane. That plane, the only value is the fact that it was made by Uriah Clapp, and his signature's on the front of that plane. The Industrial Revolution, especially, they started making planes of metal just before the Civil War. But then after the Civil War, then there were very well-established makers of tools that started making planes, like Stanley planes, you've probably heard of. Well, that was a big Bailey and Stanley. And then later on, you have Miller's Falls also. I had to put this in because this was made in central Massachusetts in Miller's Falls. It's a Miller's Falls, about a number 4 size smoothing plane. So that's why I added this in, even though it wasn't wooden, except for the handles. But it was made in central Massachusetts, so put that in. But as they become more industrialized, the styles change too. As an example, here are 2 planes that were made about the mid-1700s. And they're very fancy. As you look the way they were very well made. The craftsman really took pride in his work. Because these planes, the blades typically are not interchangeable except for the plow plane. These plow planes, this set of blades would go to this plow plane, and they would range from about a 1/16 of an inch up to about 7/8 of an inch. After 7/8 of an inch, it's almost impossible to plow. Just the amount of pressure required to push that thing. That's why you have some of these larger planes, you'll find a hole in the front of the plane where they either put a stick or a stick and a rope, and the person would be plowing whatever they wanted molding, and they'd have their apprentice pulling it with a rope because they just couldn't do it by themselves. He researched basically the industrialization and experimentation of using planes for different things, different applications. And there were a lot of people after the Civil War, especially, making planes for just about any application, anything from leather work to woodwork. The plane would be required. And he did an extensive amount of research on those planes and who made them, how they were used, how they were made. And these books are still considered, at least by me anyways, as kind of a Bible for researching planes.
So we had a lot of cool people coming in here, a lot of cool collections, and it was another successful event for the Historical Society, so I'm glad you all enjoyed it, and thanks for coming.
Collector Time is made possible with generous donations by Central Mass Metal Detectors, rediscovering the past to preserve for the future. Find us on Facebook. And Tangway Jewelers, 19 Connor Street in Gardner, serving the area since 1976.